Okay, welcome back to another episode of Words That Kill. And today,
what is the balance to the thing that you're trying to introduce?
I know that the feeling. I had two gods go to war in one of my books, and I had to work on that scene a long time, so they just didn't basically destroy the entire world.
It's too easy to go about that. It's not as interesting if every novel ends with someone being burnt, to save someone else.
Technically, they didn't burn witches except in Germany, though. I'm just saying. They actually hung witches and then burned the bodies. That's where the fire comes in. What was her first kill like as an assassin, without spoilers?
What's the slowest way to die? What's the slowest way to bleed out? And that ended up being where he had to stab.
Okay, you're going to have to tell me that off camera. So.
Writing can be a difficult and isolating experience. How do indie authors cope with it? Alcohol? Drugs? Disrespecting their elders? Probably all of those, but today we'll be looking at a more positive way to do so. Join us this week as our illustrious panel discusses celebrating wins, big and small. Why is it important? How does it help motivate you to keep going? What are some of the things our panelists are celebrating right now? There's also another edition of the Indie Connection with C.L. Cannon, where she suggests some books for you to consider reading if you like Holes by Louis Secker. We'll wrap things up with Mike Jack Stumbos telling us all about his writing during our final 5 minutes. So shut up, sit down, and open your ear holes in preparation of receiving some knowledge. It's This Week in Indies with your host, me, Ron L Lahr. Welcome, everybody, to another exciting This Week in Indies. We have an amazing panel. I'm just going to bring them all in. And it's gigantic also. There we go. That's a good setup. Or that one. I don't care. But let's just go around and have everybody introduce yourself. Start with Madeline.
Hey guys, I know I'm not hosting today. This is actually like a weird sensation for me, so I get to pick it Ron while I do it. I'm Madeline Dill, the chapter goddess. My website's here, author of the Phase Shifter series and the Ember series. Yeah, I'm glad to be here, even if it's like just to pick it Ron. So,
me too. I'm so happy you're here. That's the reason. All right, Travis.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm an author and filmmaker. I write lots of different genres, fantasy, science fiction, and horror, various flavors thereof. And also made a movie last year that's percolating around the film festival circuit. So I do a lot of writing stuff.
Nice. Michael.
My name is Michael K. Falciani. I am mostly an epic fantasy author. The Raven and the Crow series are my first 2 books, although I have just put out my steampunk fantasy novel as well, The Dwarves of Ram, Omens of War. And I am now dipping my toe into the romance novels, as my publisher has recommended from me. So that will also be coming out. I actually just finished that. It's kind of one of my wins. I'll talk about it later. But Michael K. Falciani, I'm everywhere on social media. See you there.
He's such a big slutbag. I'm really looking forward to
the multiple wives thing.
The romance. Yeah.
I will say nothing.
All right, I didn't get an intro, but I'll do my own. Hi, I'm Mike Jackson. I write science fiction primarily. And I like to say that I write sci-fi with hope and humor. And for a long time, my tagline was that I'm an author disguised as a believably normal high school teacher. The parrot on my shoulder would beg to differ. I write the This Fine Crew series. Book 4 is out. Book 5 is coming out later this year. And then one of the things we'll be talking about later is Murder Birds, the Murder Birds Unhelpful Encyclopedia, Volume 1. That is an anthology, and I am the editor and publisher of that. Yeah, I feel like I'm supposed to have a snappy send out, but Travis already said writing stuff, so I'm going to move on to somebody else.
Adequate.
I am Claudia Blood. I am middle of writing the Renegades Rising series. This is book 2, and I've got another one coming out in another month. I write sci-fi and fantasy, and science fantasy actually is my favorite thing. And I think my tagline is right now adventure awaits, but I'm still looking to see if I can find something else. And anyway, back to you guys.
All right, was that just me, or did that sound real messed up?
Did it sound real messed up? Ooh. Dang it. Is that any better?
There was something Borg-esque about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was demonic.
It's like you're in outer space.
Am I demonic? All right, should I try to come back in?
Yeah, I think so.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, that was painful. All right, let's
Hey, I am Courtney, aka CL Cannon. I do a lot of things here on Fiction Atlas Press. A lot of things here on Go Indie Now for Fiction Atlas Press, like the Indie Connection and our monthly marketing tip. And in between all of that, I actually do write fantasy and sci-fi, mostly YA fantasy. But right now, we have a Kickstarter up for Ink and Incantation that we're really excited about, and I'm going to talk to you about later for one of my wins. Happy to be here.
Sweet. Well, thanks all of you. And even Claudia with her devil audio for being here. Hopefully she'll be back in a minute. So this week we are. Oh, let's see what happens with Claudia. Hello.
Now my audio won't work.
Oh,
well, it sounds better.
I can hear you. Oh.
Oh, she's a real tease. Hello. Claudia, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
much better.
Yeah.
Technology is
Yeah,
hard,
better
yo.
Oh my God, sure is.
But I don't sound like a cyborg anymore.
No, nor demonic. You sound
Or demonic? Oh, okay. Maybe I should have kept that.
It was very weird. But welcome everybody. Welcome illustrious panel. So, that's nice. Thanks, Maddie.
doing what I can to help.
Yeah, if you want to be in charge of the comments, that's great.
I will definitely. So we don't have that 10-minute pause.
Yeah, because I'm the worst at that. But all right. Oh, so this show is sponsored by JD Astronomy. Let me grab his banner. So let's hold off on the comments for a second so we can share JD's blog URL. He's doing March of the Writers. So 31 days of prompts where you answer the prompts and do a video or a blog post, whatever you want. Share something on social media, answering these questions or discussing what's in the prompts to allow you to introduce yourself or better introduce yourself to your readers, to other writers. It is something he does every year. And today's prompt is about celebrating wins. It's called 3 Victories, Share Them Wins. And for me, all right, let's get back to seeing all of your beautiful faces. Even Michael.
There we go. Hold still. We're all set.
But for me, when I started going to the writing tribe sprints, and they incorporate that as part of the sprints that you share some wins, and normally they're pretty small. It's not my experience in the sprints I've been to that people are talking about gigantic stuff. I mean, sometimes, but the vast majority of it, it's just like, I wrote 3 times last week, or stuff of that level. I don't know. I found it incredibly motivating. The sprints themselves are great for me, because I don't get out of the house much, and so I get to see other writers, hear little stories about what's going on with them, and it very powerful for me. So reading through the list of prompts and finding out that we landed on this day was just kismet for me, because I've had such a big impact from especially other people sharing their wins, getting to hear other authors' wins shared. And so I wanted to open that up to you guys. Do you all think that process of sharing your own wins and being exposed to other authors' wins, do you find it motivating? Do you think it matters? Is it important? Share your experiences with it, and then we'll dig in a little deeper later. But does anybody have anything to say, or should we just end the show right now?
No, definitely not. I have to say it does help. I don't get to, because I'm so busy a lot, and the small wins count, and sharing those and hearing others celebrate those small wins is motivating, especially for me, because sometimes things don't just happen as fast as we want them to, and we get frustrated with that. So celebrating the small wins and hearing others do that, it helps a lot.
I agree with Maddie.
This is one of the toughest businesses there is, So sort of hearing about other people making little bits of success here and there is a huge thing. Because I mean, I don't know about you guys, but for me, when having a career kind of feels like you're yelling into a hole, with very few echoes coming back. And I think we're wired, at least I'm wired, I think people are wired to sort of, in that it's easier to focus on the negative or the lack of response than it is to focus on the happy little bits that happen. That's just me. I mean, I launched a Kickstarter about 10 or 12 days ago, and it funded in 24 hours. And I had to consciously think okay, I have to celebrate this because it's amazing. So anyway.
Nice.
Yeah, I like to hear about people's wins also. I'm sure you can't tell by looking at me, but I do, especially when I was young, I did a lot of sports, athletics, things like that. And we would always try to compliment each other. Of course, you have that rivalry, but I don't really see that so much in the writing world. What's the saying? If one person rises like a wave, we all rise together. I feel
rising tide lifts all boats.
Yes, that was it. Whatever he said. So yeah, I think it's great to hear. I love to hear about people's successes, and I like to share anything that I've done that's successful, mostly to help other people. So that's my 2 cents on it.
You're right, though. We would not have guessed you were an athlete.
Thank you, Ron, once again, for making my ego fly out the window.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if anyone would guess that I'm an athlete either. We're both wearing polos and both named Mike, so we've got that going on the writer celebrating win fronts. So I'm very in favor of it, and also I have to be very professionally in favor of it. I've been a teacher long enough that group encouragement is a big part of the process. Something that I find most helpful for me in the celebrating wins bracket is having a couple of different circles of fellow authors. For my close confidant people, when they're celebrating wins, I get to feel selfishly like I'm part of that, because I've been talking to them through the process as well. So I know a lot of the stuff that's gone on, the lower part of the iceberg that you don't necessarily get to see from the surface. I think the thing that's most difficult in terms of the jealousy factor or the insecurity factor when other people are celebrating wins is if you don't know the backstory. So if you don't know the context and you see, out of the blue, overnight success from this person, what did they do differently than me? And if you don't know, it's hard not to it's hard not to, sometimes beat yourself up over it. So I think having some circles, like a close confidant circle, having like support groups like TWT, the Writing Tribe, and Travis and I were talking about Superstars writing seminars before the recording started. I think that's really important for having like groups of wins that you can feel like you're part of as a community, so you can see that tide lifting all boats rather than just worrying that you're, a lonely little dinghy out there in the ocean.
Key word there is dinghy.
Dinghy. I also think people forget too, including ourselves, how big a book is, right? And so you get a little daunted that you're like, okay, I'm in the middle of this book again. Am I ever going to do it? And hearing those incremental wins and recognizing that, I've done this before, and it just takes some time, and it takes little incremental things getting you there. And every step counts. And even if it's a teeny tiny little step, because that's all your day can take, it's fine. You made progress, right? And that's what matters, and you're going to get there. And so that's the win, right? The progress, the journey to get there.
Nice.
I think I appreciate the small wins even more, because it feels like if someone else can celebrate something that's so small, so can I. Because a lot of times you feel like you can't really celebrate something that's like, oh, I wrote 1,000 words today. Everybody writes 1,000 words. It's kind of how you get in your head. And then when you see other people who are struggling and then they celebrate that win, you feel like, okay, I can too. And it's not just me that's struggling. Everybody's struggling. We're all doing good together. So it just kind of humbles you a little bit and makes you feel like you're more normal, I think, instead of having so much pressure on you all the time. It's just like, I don't know, something about that.
Yeah, I agree. Because seeing those hit those small number goals, it makes you have this sense like, hey, it's okay to set smaller goals for myself. I can do this just a little bit at a time. Like, for me, a new goal I realized to set this week, since I use a scheduler for a lot of my social media posts, that it's okay to just do a few days at a time instead of trying to plan out like a week and then another week and just cut it back. So, yeah.
Well, since all I ever have is small wins, yeah, that's great to hear from everybody. But it's funny, as we were talking about the show, getting things ready, we started talking about bragging, that a lot of people have trouble, tooting their own horn, or especially amongst their peers. And of course, I think it's the farthest thing from bragging, unless you really go out of your way to present it in a certain way. But in general, celebrating wins, like with the Writing Tribe, and Mike Jack is one of the guys that runs sprints, and I'd be curious to hear what he thinks, because I never have felt like somebody is bragging when people are sharing their wins during the sprints, no matter what they've said. And I don't know if that's attitude but do any of you guys have trouble? Oh, that's very sweet. Sort of. But do you guys have trouble expressing positive news or sharing positive news or feeling like you're bragging?
Or even the group you send it to, right? Like, do you guys have trouble where if it's your writer and your writer friends, like I can say something stupid like, woohoo, I did 30 words or whatever, right? But you say that outside of the group and you're like, that just sounds, I don't know, dumb, or like, they're not going to understand, right?
Yeah.
That is a success. 30 words on that day with the energy I had, that was a success. And then look at you like, really?
Yeah. Yeah. Because there's a lot of days that 30 words.
30 words is like, woo!
It's down, it's progress. Definitely. Yeah. So, and I've always, I don't know if maybe it was how I was raised or something, but like I have never been the most comfortable just bragging about like my wins and celebrating. I'm just like, yes, I did it. And like, I keep it to myself and just kind of like move on. So, and it just, I don't know exactly where it stems from, but I just can't. I'm trying to get better, but so.
Are you from the Midwest?
Sort of. I'm in Oklahoma. So.
I saw everybody, saying, yeah, I have trouble talking about my wins. I do not. I really don't. It doesn't. I mean, I don't go around talking about how great I am. That's what I'm saying. But I feel comfortable talking about things that I've done and things that I've accomplished. And I think I'm equally comfortable, even more so, talking about the things I failed in, which and I almost like making fun of it. So I feel like if you can be comfortable with one or the other, you could do both. For example, this morning, because of the rain here, I woke up, I wasn't paying attention. There was a leak in my house, and I stepped in it, and I got my sock all wet, which was annoying. And then I took it off, and I cleaned up the spot. I said, "Oh, I got to get my laptop." I went outside, immediately stepped in dog poop. I don't mind talking about it because that's reality. So that was at worst, of course, in the water. But yeah, I don't mind bringing it up. Maybe it's because I did so many sports. We just talked about, hey, this is what I'm working on. This is where I'm at. So I feel like that was something that I would. And by the way, Mike, also a teacher. We have a lot in common.
See, I did sports and I totally still struggle with it. And I don't know. I mean, talking with the team, it was okay. But it's a whole different ball game, with the words and stuff.
Yeah. I will also put myself out there as somebody who struggles with the commenting on wins publicly and figuring out which ones to share when.
Yeah.
But to Ron's question earlier on the sprints, I have found that when people are celebrating the good news on the sprints, I always feel good about it. And I think part of it is the community. I think the other part is it's a self-selecting group. People are going to show up for the sprints, stay there with the group, interact with the group, and celebrate each other. By the time they're getting to saying about their stuff, it doesn't feel like bragging. I think the issues that I find in some chapters of the community are when I run into people who seem like they only want to brag but don't want to listen to anyone else's good news. So yeah, so I think that I think the sprints are a very good environment for finding sort of yes and with that one. Yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
Maybe it has something to do with being
very
a writer, because I don't know any writers who brag. I know a ton of writers, and then then there's that old Garrison Keillor joke where the extroverted writer looks at the other person's shoes, right? So maybe I like Madeline said, maybe it's a Midwest thing, or maybe I have a really hard time sort of tooting my own horn at all, and that and professionally that applies most to marketing, right? Right? I mean, I'm okay and sitting and doing the word grind, even on the days when I only get 30 words. But the marketing, Mike Jack's running a Kickstarter, I'm running a Kickstarter, and somebody else here is doing. Was it Courtney was also doing one? Mm-hmm. Putting that stuff out there is an effort of will, because. Because there's always that voice in the back of your mind going, well, what if you fail? What if you fail publicly, right? So there's a really staunch component of that to my mental stew.
Sorry, Ron.
Working together, a well-oiled team. Yeah. So I shared how I discovered how impactful celebrating wins was, which was through the sprints. But how did other people encounter it? Because we're, originally you're just writing, you're by yourself. And yeah, I'm curious if, we've all talked about how it is helpful. How did you get to where it was helpful? How?
I did a writer's immersion a couple of years ago, actually more years than I want to admit to. And I met this group of gals that we shared our work in advance. And then we did it's sort of this critique thing. And I think it was 4 days or whatever. And it was very focused. And we stayed in touch after that and came up with our own writing immersion. And it was just that, you were talking about the camaraderie and realizing that we started at the beginning together and that you could see the story as it unfolded. And so you felt very comfortable, basically, telling them about everything that was going right and wrong. And so when someone did get a win, a couple of those different people did have some very successful things happen to them. And it was, very uplifting because you saw them from the beginning and keeping those ties together. And then, you could share your own little incremental wins or the bigger wins. And it just became, so I do think it's the community part, finding people you're comfortable sharing with so that they can, be a part of what you're doing. Because writing is totally solo if you don't do that. And then it's a little depressing, just saying.
Yeah, I agree that it can be very depressing with what Claudia said. For me, it was before I got into like the writing tribe. I was doing sprints and stuff back when my son was going to daycare and I had more time, like with him there. Now with his half a day days, I literally come home, sit down, and I get like an hour to like work solid on stuff, and then I have to go get him. But I actually came across Celebrating the Small Wins through a self-help book that I was reading, and I actually think it is, back here on the shelf behind me. It's the Warrior Goddess Training book. It was just kind of like self-empowering for women and stuff, and it just like talked about celebrating the little things. So, yeah.
I'll jump in on the self-help book channel there. So one of the big ones for me, and trying to get more comfortable with being able to share wins and being able to be in communities that are sharing wins, was Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. That one I read, I'm going to say, in 2019. And it was also around the same time that I was in the process of leaving the writing group. There's a particular writing group that I think really exemplified the sort of crab bucket analogy that, like, if anyone was starting to succeed, they would all just like get nasty and pull them back down.
Wow.
It was really rough. It was the kind of thing where like everyone was very big about like spouting the things that they'd heard at whatever kind of workshop or event, but not actually like trying to lift each other up. And so there were a couple of stories that, like, you know, we were all aiming for the same anthologies, we were all aiming for the same open calls, and then I had a couple of like pro level sales and that they didn't get into, and like they were just talking me down on it, and I was like, it's like, this feels like the kind of thing that I should feel bad about, but on the other hand, this says something about their insecurity, not necessarily about like, you know, anything that I'm doing wrong. So yeah, and eventually I just kind of worked backwards to the patterns, talked to some outside sources, and they're like, yeah, you need to get out of that group. And so when I transitioned out of that, I ended up being a lot more deliberate with like what kinds of writing groups I wanted to be involved in and what kinds of interactions people were having. So I would look for environments where people were more willing to positively engage with each other, even if, you know, we're moving at different rates. So,
yeah, that's like toxic.
It really was.
That's crazy. No.
I do? Oh dear, what happened?
Because it was toxic.
Yeah.
Well, does anybody have a good example of when they were, you know, a little depressed or down in the dumps, and the sharing experience, either giving or hearing? Michael, he already knows.
Michael.
So I'll just
go to
him.
One of the things that happened to me was I had written it for an anthology that my publisher had put out, and it was a Amazon, #1 on the horror charts. Great story, and mine was one of the stories in it. And I foolishly, because I was new, it's my second publication, I went through the reviews, which was a mistake. And as I read one of the reviews, it talked about, it was a 4-star review. It talked about how it really liked all the stories except for one. And as I was reading this review, I realized that he was talking about my story. And he wrote something like, well, one of these authors was an SJW author. And he believes he just had to include a woman of color and someone from the LGBTQ community. And I was sitting there going, what the heck is an SJW? I didn't know what that meant. So I looked it up.
What is that?
Right. That's how I felt. So it's a social justice warrior. And then I said, I don't know what that means either. So I had to look that up.
Not a bad thing.
Right. So as I looked this up, it said, this is somebody who believes in multiculturalism, supports the LGBT community. And after I read this, my publisher and some of the other people were like, hey, man, that's not a bad thing. That guy's just got a problem. And so from now on, when you guys talk to me, you must know that I am a social justice warrior. How many of anyone can say that? But because I was able to talk to my publisher and the people in the writing group, they kind of made me look at this like, dude, don't worry about it. And I said, okay, I kind of turned it into a more positive thing for myself with their help. I hope that was okay. Example.
Yeah, and at least it was 4 stars too. Like they didn't completely.
Well, it was. As he wrote, it would have been 5 except for this one guy. I was like, hey man, that's your problem. I learned very quickly. I was like, hey, you got to have thick skin in this business, though.
And there's always going to be people out there that are like against that, like. So
you're never going to make them all happy. So
if bigots don't like your work, that does seem like a win. Like, you don't want to be the writer that white nationalists share at their convention. Like, oh my God, this Falciani, he's our guy. This is, he's leading us to a,
Oh man.
So yeah.
Look at it this way: you seriously got to somebody. That story got to somebody, even if it wasn't in the way that person wanted. You got to somebody, even if it was him seeing himself in the villain, right? If you can do that, you're doing it right. But back to the community aspect, as a baby writer, I might not have recognized that, right? And it's only through sort of, over more than a decade, 12 years at this point, of meeting more writers, meeting authors at all levels, and just being around those conversations where you learn that stuff, right? To sort of be able to brush off that kind of feedback, right? Like the writer sitting in isolation just can sit there and stew about it. So that's a tough thing. But nowadays it's easy to just laugh about it, right? Well, at least for me, because I guess I've had that community for a while, and and know how to deal with it in ways that I might not have, in say 2008 or 9.
Gotcha. All right. Before we get to the meat of today, I want to actually take a break and move into the Indie Connection. Courtney, did you want to say anything about this before I launch the video?
This one was a hard one. So this is for Holes, if you've watched the movie or if you've read the books. And I love the book, but it was really hard to find comparable stories. So each book I pick has like a little segment of what makes Holes so good. So not each one is exactly like Holes, but they have an element of Holes that I think is important. So they're great books on their own, but they're not going to be exactly like Holes.
Definitely an underappreciated book too.
Yes.
So yeah.
So good. I love Holes. Yeah.
That sounded filthy when you said it. I'm just saying. Everybody else was talking and it was perfect, and then you ruined it. All right.
I mean,
I'm sorry.
I am.
Hey guys, CL Cannon here from Fiction Atlas Press, bringing you another Indie Connection. Today I'd like to tell you about some indie books that you might enjoy if you're a fan of Holes by Louis Satcher. The first book I have for you is called I Have a Bad Feeling About This by Jeff Strand. Wilderness survival tip number 1. Drinking your own sweat will not save your life. Somebody might have told you that, but they were trying to find out if you'd really do it. Wilderness survival tip number 2. In case of an avalanche, don't despair. You're doomed, but that's a wicked cool death. Wilderness survival tip number 3. If you're relying on this book for actual survival tips, you're dead already. Henry Lambert would rather play video games than spend time in the great outdoors, but that doesn't make him a wuss. Skinny nerd? Fine. But wuss is a little harsh. Sadly, his dad doesn't agree, which is why Henry is being shipped off to Strongwood's survival camp. Strongwoods isn't exactly as advertised. It looks like the victim of a zombie apocalypse. The camp director is a psycho drill sergeant, and Henry's sure he saw a sign written in blood. The second book I have for you is called Alone in the Woods by Rebecca Behrens. Jocelyn and Alex have always been best friends, until they aren't. Jocelyn's not sure what happened, but she hopes the annual joint family vacation in the isolated North Woods will be the perfect spot to rekindle their friendship. But Alex still isn't herself when they get to the cabin, and Jocelyn reaches a breaking point during a rafting trip that goes horribly wrong. When the girls' tube tears, it leaves them stranded and alone, and before they know it, the two are hopelessly lost. Wearing swimsuits and water shoes with only the contents of their wet backpack, the girls face threats from the elements, and as they spend days and nights lost in the wilderness, they'll have to overcome their fractured friendship to make it out of the woods alive. The third book I have for you is called Stoneway by Christopher Francis. There's something strange going on at Stoneway. Something very strange. Haunted by a kid named Riley Grayson, 12-year-old Bentley is suddenly confronted by 3 things he fears the most in life: love, bullying, and ghosts. While on a grade 8 camping trip at Lake Stoneway, Bentley struggles with his fears, trying to find ways to get the attention of Michelle Hartley, while stopping his best friend from picking on a new boy named Simon. But when the ghost of Riley visits the camp, everything turns upside down. Everything. And the last book I have for you is called Summer of the Woods by Stephen K. Smith. Do you remember your first real adventure? When summer was filled with magic and anything seemed possible? When young brothers Derek and Sam move with their family to Virginia, they have no idea what adventures the summer will bring. As they explore their creaky old house and the deep surrounding woods, they uncover a 60-year-old mystery of a valuable coin collection stolen from the local museum. Join the boys as they spend their summer running from danger and searching the woods, secret caves, rushing waters, and hidden passageways for treasure and the rare 1877 Indian head cent coin. Okay, that's all for me this week. I'll see you next week on The Indie Connection. Bye!
Well, that was awesome. And the one that spoke to me the most was Stoneway, because it had the tagline, "When bullying goes so far, goes too far," which implies to me that there's a sweet spot of just the right amount of bullying. Which reminds me, being born in the 60s, there's plenty of bullying when I was growing up. There's not nearly enough now. So I feel like that pro-bullying message I can get behind.
It's definitely different now than it was when we were all younger, before the technology age. So,
Well, for you, that was like last week. So
once like Facebook and everything, social media was introduced to all of our generations, like it's worse with generations under mine. I mean, I experienced cyberbullying myself, but like it's way, way worse now than it was when So, sorry to bring the mood down.
No, I was just planning on some bullying later. You've inspired me to use the internet for bullying. All right, so I wanted to do some actual celebrating of our wins to both answer the prompt from JD, but also, it makes sense with the title of the episode and everything. So, would anybody like to share some wins, big or small? JD's trying to get people to do 3, so I don't care if you do 3, but don't tell JD I said that.
Are these recent? Are they like...
Well, anything. I mean...
No, they're not super recent, but they're, at least in like the last
They have to be
year.
from today. Does anybody have any writing wins from this morning?
I spontaneously sold anything.
I got up this morning.
Yeah.
No,
but
I mean,
for real, though, I can
choice.
start like the win train if y'all want to. Okay, so my first one I really thought of was completing NaNoWriMo for 2 years in a row. That was a big one for me because that was like one of the most challenging things for myself. I mean, I can't reproduce what I do in NaNoWriMo because it's like a whole other level of getting things done. But 2 years in a row, winning it is, I finally got a bestseller tag on one of my box sets that I published last year.
Woo.
That's a win for me.
Yeah.
And then where's my list? And learning how to format my own books in Adobe InDesign. That is a win for me because that saves me like $50. It's not a lot, but I will take it.
Very nice.
Nice.
I like all of those. Yeah. Anybody else want to go?
I can go. I've got 3 that I can think of. The first one, as I mentioned, I'm a filmmaker. My horror comedy short film called Demon for Hire about a month ago got the best first-time filmmaker award at the Days of the Dead Film Festival in Atlanta. That was kind of a huge weekend for me.
Nice.
I mentioned my Kickstarter earlier. It felt like a pretty huge win that it funded in less than 24 hours. That felt like a big deal. And then let's see. I'm trying to think of a good third one. I was at the Superstars Writing Seminars about a month ago, and I pitched a novel to someone who was there, and I felt like I'm not big on pitching, but that one I felt like I knocked over the fence. So I had my fingers crossed, that there might be something positive coming from that. So
nice. Those are great.
Those are good.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to go next.
I will happily go next to place all the pressure off of you. So I have several actually. One of the ones I'm most proud of has almost nothing to do with me, but this is my first book. If you take a look at the book cover was designed by the students at the local high school, and I feel like that was a huge win.
Cool.
Not just for me, but for the whole community. We had a contest, and I think we had like 40 or 50 entrants, and the winner happened to be a former student of mine who I taught when I was teaching 5th grade. So it was really exciting to hand out the award, and they were able to sign a contract with my publisher. And they've done the second, and we just picked the third book winner as well. Another big win that I love to talk about, mostly because it's not about me, was Joshua Saxon, who was the audiobook narrator for my first book, Darkstorm Rising. We won the audio book of the year award at the Imaginarium Awards this last summer, and I know that he's up for the second one, for the second book as well. So I'm hoping we win that one. And finally, I did just finish this past week my brand new romance novel, which is my first time writing that kind of genre. It's nothing like you might think so, but it's not. Since everyone's giving me a hard time about that, but yes, that I have to say, I was really far more interested and excited in it than I planned on being. So I was really happy to get that done. So those are my wins for this last couple months.
Sweet.
Very nice. Excuse me.
I'll jump in next. It seems like we're snaking on through. So one of the big ones that is still not too long ago for me to be able to talk about it is Writers of the Future win. So first place winner, Writers of the Future for Volume 38, which came out this last year. And so, yeah, got to do the whole Hollywood experience and speech on stage and prize money and very large trophy. So that was very fun. That was April last year when that one came out. And along with that, that story has been on a lot of recommended reading lists. In fact, it was on the SIFWA Nebula ballot and recommended reading list for this last year. It's not a finalist, but I'm like, hey, there's recognition there, and it also made one of the higher selections on the Tangent Online Must Read 2022 lists. So there were some very cool things just tied into this story. Incidentally, that's the illustration of it. So might be hard to see, but school children with alien symbiotes on their back. Go figure. And then I'm going to echo Travis here. So I had a Kickstarter go up this last October, and that one funded in 24 hours. We hit a lot of our stretch goals, and we're able to bring in some additional authors. We hit the funding threshold for me to be able to bring in Jody Lynn Nye as one of the authors, which was really cool. And then earlier this year, not too long ago, I had kind of a called shot to a pro market. I wrote a story about absolutely no calls, and then there was a call that came out, and I'm like, this editor would buy this specific story. Sent it out. I'm like, this one sold there. It sold, yay. And then while I was in the process of signing the contract for that one, I got another acceptance letter in during that process, short window. But I'm like, this is awesome. I didn't know that was on my bucket list, but it's checked off now.
Very nice.
Nice.
Awesome.
All right, Courtney, we're going to go to you.
Okay. I guess I'll start off a little bit smaller. I teach at a homeschool co-op, and I was doing book club, and now I have been selected to do creative writing, and I started doing creative writing with the kids this year, and it's been really rewarding, trying to help them figure out, how to get into writing, how to improve their writing. So that's been really fun and nice to do. Then I am going to Imaginarium Book Festival in Washington, D.C. in May, and I got picked to be out of, I think there's only going to be 2 panels, one on each day, and I got picked to be one of the authors on one of those panels to speak. So that's going to be awesome. I'm going to be up there with some people that like whose books I actually have on my shelf and have read. That's kind of like I'm going to geek out and try not to ramble like I'm rambling right now while I'm up there. And then we are doing, of course, the Ink and Incantation Kickstarter. We've got a beautiful new hardcover. It's going to be really awesome. We're now to our 4th stretch goal. We've also funded in 24 hours. We're at our 4th stretch goal. We're at $4,600 some dollars or something. And if we get to our next stretch goal, I'm going to be doing an audio version of my book to give to the backers. So that's going to be really cool.
Nice.
Super cool. Okay, so I guess I'm last. I'm super excited. One of the wins was the last novel that I was working on. I was really struggling, the last couple of years with COVID and everything else. I've been trying to get back into my writing groove, and had an immersion and did 35,000 words in 4 days or something like that, and totally got the story out and done, and I love it. So I'm pretty excited about that. And then this is going to sound really dumb, but it's a little win for me. I was volunteering at swim meets, the semifinals for swim meets, and it's really loud inside of the room, and I can't hear anything because I can't hear all the time. And I had this inspiration that the character in the next book, she is going to be hard of hearing, and all of a sudden, everything that I had in my mind about how things were going to play out clicked into place. Like I suddenly could see how everything was going to work going through in the story, and like mentally rearranged what that book was going to look like. And I'm super excited about that. So it's kind of a little bit of a, kind of a silly win, but it's good, right? It gets you moving forward. And I'm going to stop at 2 and let you guys go back.
Wow. Well, that's very cool. I love that one. Your last one. So I didn't introduce myself. I forgot about me. All I care about is you guys. But
That would be we all laugh, right?
So my name's Ron Lahr. I write fantasy, science fiction, humor, and I do a bunch of shows on Go Indie Now. I do a game show, Indie Mayhem, and I do mean reviews, No Stars Given. And for me, having had some rough times during the pandemic with family stuff, doing those shows, just keeping going on them was a win, because there was so much energy and time taken up dealing with my parents. So and while it can be hard to go and write comedy after dealing with tragedy all day, the shows, you can't just, the show's out on Monday or Tuesday. You can't go, well, I'll worry about that next week. I mean, my books got pushed way back, but having that schedule was very helpful, to force me to get to be creative, because I tell you, by the time I was done, I was in a much better mood and a much better place than when I was wallowing in the unpleasantness that is my life. But so that was a big one. The show, just having the shows to do and being a part of the Go Indie Now network was very helpful for me. Definitely a win. And then recently, I've gotten back into writing. I mean, I had months, and the sprints on the writing tribe have been amazing for me, because again, something I can schedule and then participate in, and then they're so motivating. So that's been great. Of course, now we're moving, so I'm taking a break again. But anyway, my third thing was my anthology. I've had the opportunity to work with a bunch of awesome people, some of whom are here, and that has been really fun, because while writing is very solitary, one of the ways to make it less so is, of course, to collaborate. And while I'm not writing the stories with the people, getting to edit with people and tell them how bad their stuff is and that they need to fix it has been very rewarding for me. I've enjoyed that a lot. No, I'm just kidding. All right. So There is. Oh, well, that's very sweet. Now I'm crying like a baby.
Keep it together, Ron.
Too,
yeah.
Ron, so.
Come on, you could do it, Ron.
Where's the spray bottle?
So I do want to look at the flip side of this topic, because the previous day's prompt was life isn't easy, and life as a writer sure as hell isn't easy either. Sometimes we fall, though we always get back up again. What are some of the most intense failures you've had, and what did you learn from them? So he started with the failures and tough times first, and then moved into, the happy hippie stuff. We did it the other way around. But does anybody want to talk about the converse of celebrating wins? Sharing your failures. I mean, Michael, you have a lot of failures.
I do have a lot.
I'll volunteer you.
I thank you. I as always, I'm ready. So, I know that I've put in for several anthologies, and one of which I wrote for. I think it was for Chris Kennedy Publishing, and the guy Rob Howell, who was very nice. He told me after reading a short story, he said, "Listen, you weren't one of the people that we selected, but I wanted to talk to you because I really liked what you had sent." And I had this feeling of the gut punch where I was like, "Oh yeah, great! I'm glad." But it wasn't that good. And very nonchalantly at the end, he said something like, "If you wanted to, you could probably turn this into a novel." And I was like, "Oh, well, maybe I will." Here it is. This is what became of that negative experience. And the funny thing is, if I hadn't gotten the failure, I probably would have never written this book. But I started thinking about it. I was like, yeah, that might be kind of a fun thing to write. And then the next thing you know, because this was during the pandemic, so I had plenty of time, I just said, well, I'm going to toy with it. All of a sudden I'm at 75,000 words. I was like, what the heck is going on? I got to finish this now. So again, I would, you're going to get the negative things that happen in life, whether you wanted to or not, whether you expected to or not. To me, it's always about how you respond when things are down. And I'm not going to tell you this was the worst point of my life, but I know I was, I wasn't happy that I didn't get picked, but I wanted to try to change it into something more positive. So that's kind of the way I roll things. What did you call me the first time we had a panel together, Ron? You called me Pollyanna?
Yes, it was awful. We were on a show together.
Great.
And I thought, man, Michael he's too freaking nice. It's not even, it can't be real. I hate him. And so I gave him a lot of crap.
Yes,
and then I got to know him, and he was totally acting. It was for show.
I'm a jack. Terrible.
It was his like, I'm at work, at public school.
His persona.
Where I have to be, to be appropriate.
I think you read my first book. You're like, oh, this is nothing like that guy. What's this going? He was acting.
That's what I told Michael. I'm like, I read your book expecting it to be like, and everybody held hands. And,
that's not the way I read.
We had a picnic. So I read the book. I was very happy because it wasn't that. But yeah, I liked that story a lot. I had one similar though. Oh, go ahead.
No, go. You actually gave me one of the best compliments ever, because you're a fantasy writer, and I remember after you had read the first book, you would text me. You're like, dude, I didn't like your book. I was like, it's like I loved it. So for hearing that from another author, it was really a big deal. And I don't want to get all emotional because I can, but it's nice. It's a really that's a big win. I know we're talking about wins and losses, but that was really a kind thing, and it helped motivate me to say, all right, I gotta continue to keep going.
Well, Michael's story reminds me of one. So I love the 20 books 50K group on Facebook, and they do anthologies where they'll do them by genre to give people a chance to get published. It's for the newly published or unpublished authors. And they did one for fantasy, and I submitted a short story, and I thought that I had a real leg up because my story was very funny, and I'm like, most of the fantasy stories that are going to be submitted are going to not be funny, and so mine will really stand out, and this will be awesome. And they were like, we do not want that. We do not want something that isn't. It's because I'm like, being different would be great, and they're like, no, we don't want anything different. And that made me decide to do my own anthology. So that very similar to Michael's there. But anybody else want to talk about their just shit life?
So, oh wow. Okay, so can we talk about so the whole COVID thing, right? So I have small kids and the homeschooling, and my husband deployed, and all of a sudden you get to the end of the day and there was no energy for any sort of writing. So I basically stopped writing during the whole COVID thing. And so that was sort of like the bottom, right? And it's something that like an itch that you need to scratch, and it was still there and it was getting worse and worse, but I could not figure out how to get out of my own head to make it happen. Everything felt like it was like you write something and it was shit. Ooh, sorry, I shouldn't say that. But
we're good.
Right? But then, like you said, through the community and through like trying to get in, and because it is an itch and it's something you've got to do, I figured out how to get my way out. And it was what you were talking about with like scheduling things, right? So this is the time I'm going to do it, even if it's only a half an hour. That's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to celebrate the fact that my ass was in the chair and I was writing. And I think that, turned into better habits after that, right? And more things done, and I've been more productive once I kind of got back up onto the swing of things again because of deliberate habits that came from that failure.
Nice. I love that. That's awesome. Anybody else?
I'll jump in. So like my stretch of like feeling like a writing failure actually came fairly immediately after like my first short story publication. So like I was full-time public school teacher and other add-ons, right? And I didn't think that I had time for novels. I knew that I wanted to write, but like, where's the time? Where's the energy? And so, I wrote a couple of short stories, and at one point I was encouraged to send off a submission. First submission went out there and it got accepted. And it was my first submission and it was my first acceptance. And naturally, that's the kind of thing that means, cool, all of them will be acceptances. No, that's not true. but like this lasted for a while. So this was like fall of 2016 was when that acceptance came in. And so I had a couple of years where I felt like I was basically being buried by my job, and I was trying to research things about writing and publishing, and everything that I was seeing seemed like a hard rule, but it was also very contradictory because some of these people who are giving this advice, they got their start in very different genres or many years ago or so on and so forth. And it's just like, it didn't work. There were so many contradictions, and I kept like beating myself up over all the things that I felt like I wasn't going to be able to get off the ground. And I wrote a couple of novels spread out over way too long a period of time for me in terms of my writing process because, well, being buried in school. And it wasn't until like 2019 when I started kind of shifting focus, and I was like, I need to not listen to the everyone. I need to pick like a couple pieces of advice, set those as my beacons, and just follow those and ignore the rest of it. And if it doesn't work, cool, then I'll try something new. So it kind of put me into like a more comfortable trial and error process. I started setting goals that were more about what I could do, like not how many stories were sold at what level, but like, can I write a couple novels a year? Can I write and send out a few short stories a year? And I started like increasing goals from there, and then the mindset shifted such that like last year, no, it was 2 years ago by now, I sent out a science fiction story, a first contact with an alien species story, to the LeVar Burton Reads contest, which was a very cool thing to just send to. And I was like, sweet. I mean, I'm a Trekkie. I have a comm badge tattoo on my chest, and Geordie LaForge is my favorite. So as I kept getting like response that I was getting further and further in that contest, and then eventually got to finalists. It was like the top 12. These ones are not being read by the slush. They are being read by Geordie frickin' LaForge himself.
Yes.
I made it to the top 12 of that, and then afterwards it was rejected. So it wasn't the one that they chose for LeVar Burton Reads. But I'm like, I'm calling this a win. This is a LeVar Burton Reads finalist, and so it's a prequel to my series. So I ended up self-pubbing that just so I can be like, cool, here's a prequel out there that I can use as a lead-in, and I will totally take it as a win that it was a LeVar Burton Reads finalist. 12 people out of like however many people in the nation submitted to this. So I feel like the mindset shift is a big part of it, and being able to be in the right communities for you and find the right kinds of advice for you, because not every piece of advice is good for every author at every time period in their writing lives. Putting that out there as much as possible these days. Some advice is like not for you or not for you right now. And that was really helpful for me to be able to like make that shift.
Woo!
Yeah,
that's cool.
I like that story because I give a lot of awful advice.
We know.
And I don't want people to follow it.
I'll go. Because while we're all talking, I had a thought that I think anybody who has a writing career is sort of collecting failures, and it's just we have to choose how we deal with them, because externally everybody else only sees the successes. They see the books that get published, they see the stories that get published, but internally they don't know. But those people do not know how many times you got rejected. They don't know whether that book actually sold any copies at all. When you have a couple of books that feel like kind of books of your heart. I mean, they're all books of your heart, but some of them are like your special babies, right? And then those books don't sell. Like, you can't give them away. That gets tough. And all you can do is move on and try to write the next thing. And sort of hope that those books will find their audience, or that the people who read them, like, the 36 people who actually read them, will enjoy them. Because that's one of the things that we don't really talk about is unless we're bestsellers or selling literally thousands of copies or millions of copies, we don't talk about sales. Sort of that's a cultural thing. Like, we don't talk about money. We don't talk about salary, right? Like, if you're, for your day jobs and such. But so sort of stitching together all those failures with these little pinpoints of light, these successes, and sort of trying to focus on the successes, even though there's probably far more of the other thing. That's hard. It's really hard. And it's something that I struggle with at times. Not always, but once in a while. So,
well, I love that. It reminded me of my favorite rejection, which was way back before the internet.
Yeah.
And so I had submitted a short story to a very prominent magazine, and it was inappropriate for them, but I didn't care. And of course they rejected it. And it's like this mimeographed rejection letter. I mean, it just looks like crap. But some low-level, person in their editing team had written around the edges of the mimeograph thing, encouraging me, saying they loved the story. And I still have that, 30 years later. But yes, best rejection ever. How about you, Courtney? Do you want to go?
Most of my failures have to do with me not meeting a deadline, because I am a horribly slow writer, and I have so many other things going on. But I want to talk, I guess, about one of our anthologies that I thought was going to do so well. The stories in it were so great, but I made a wrong marketing choice, when I was first starting out. It was only our third anthology. And so it was a time travel anthology, and we got an offer from Doctor Who Online to advertise with them. And so I was like, that'll be perfect. That's where I'm going to put all of my advertising money. And we only got, I used a tracking link. We only got 3 clicks for the whole year. We got our money back, but our advertising money was tied up for a whole year. And so that book essentially just died. And it was so good. But once we got all of our money back, I started promoting it more, and it's slowly recovering. But I felt so bad because I made such a wrong decision, and it affected how much money the authors made. So that's one of probably my worst failure I've ever made. And I've learned not to put all my eggs in one basket since then.
Yeah.
I have a question. How many of those 3 clicks were you?
Probably at least one.
That's true.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. A lot of mine is similar to that too, like not meeting deadlines, and then that's kind of why with my books, I don't put up a pre-order until like it is done. So
me and you are so busy. We have so much going on all the time. It's hard. It is so hard.
So
I just can't get over how mad I am at Doctor Who. Furious. Just stunned. Although, it makes, so the Avengers Endgame, when Karen, whatever her last name, Gillian, they're all standing there talking about all the time travel movies that have taught us about time travel, and nobody says anything about Doctor Who when there's a Doctor Who actress standing right there. That's my favorite part of the whole movie.
For real.
Just that they just ignore it. And I'm like, did she not remember that she was in Doctor Who? I mean, I don't know. Anyway, I did want to, before we move on to the final 5 minutes with Mike Jack, the whole march of the writers is about letting people get to know you in a different way or more deeply. How important is it to all of you as writers to connect that way, to your audience, to really open up about yourself to them? I will go first. Screw my audience. I don't care about them. All I tell them about is my gardening.
And your
which I went almost a whole show about not talking about my garden. But I'm just kidding. But how about you guys? What are your thoughts on?
I'll go first on this. I think it's super duper important, honestly, to show them your authentic self. I mean, that's a lot of what I portray with my interviews and stuff that I do on my own YouTube channel, is sharing that creative's authenticity, but like just sharing with them little bits and pieces, like through my newsletters, one of the places I really do it on a regular basis, things of what have happened during the week. Like I took my son hiking for his first time over the weekend, and that's going in today's newsletter. And it's just like any strange experiences, like gardening, sports, and stuff like that. So yeah, they kind of get little views into my life and what goes on with it. So
nice.
Can I do that too? It'll be
fun. Just kidding. All right. Anybody else want to go?
I'm happy to go, as always. Excellent. Happy to talk.
You're the best.
I do like to mingle with my people that any of my fans. I like to meet where I meet most of them is whether it's at craft fairs or book signing events. It's a great way to get that one-on-one time with anybody who is invested in your writing. I've had lots of people come up to me after the first book came out, said, when is the second book coming out? I've get lots of people that talk to me on Twitter. TikTok is another one. They get to see who you are. And I think you're not really just selling your book. You're kind of selling yourself, as I'm sure you all know. But to me, it's really important to touch base with your fans. And I try to do it on social media as much as possible. So for me, yes, extremely important to be in touch with my fan base.
I use my OnlyFans page to sell myself.
So you have said.
I don't think they mean that.
Yeah, that's what I took.
Well, it's targeted toward your audience. Yeah. Yeah. So I'll jump in on this one briefly as well. So I will admit that I'm trying to figure that out. So bizarre that this may sound, because I'm here. I'm a teacher. I have a musical theater background. I have intense social anxiety. I do not mingle well. So a big part for me is figuring out okay, what are the things that I can put out there and connect with people without going so far that it's not sustainable for me, right? And then in addition to that, I've discovered that I'm not the kind of person who likes to put out anything even vaguely negative. Like if there's a book or movie that I don't like, that's a thing that I share separately with close friends, but I don't put online. So I'm trying to lean into if there's something that I'm genuinely excited about, I want to share it. If there's something that I'm genuinely excited about that I can just network around to the world about, that I'm good with that. And also the moment I start hearing from readers things that they're writing as well, because I find that I interact with a lot of writers at conventions. So yeah, a lot of emerging authors. I really get invested in that. So I love asking other people about what they're working on, where they're at in their writing process, and what the next stage or step is for them, or what kinds of things that they're looking to do. And so that's a way that it feels very authentic. But at the same time, I'm still trying to figure out the balance of which things I put forward and which things I'm yeah, I don't know if I'm going to let the audience in that far. So that's a work in progress for me. I will be asking for advice and rewatching this to check out other people's advice in a bit later.
Thanks. I like that.
I guess I'll go next. I exactly like Maddie. I tend to put my whole entire personality online. Now, in person, I am very introverted, but online, I feel like I can pretty much share whatever I want to. I have a section at the top of my newsletter that shows everything that's going on in my life right now, funny things. I like to joke around a lot in my newsletter and do funny polls with weird little gifs and stuff. And of course, on social media, I try to be pretty open. I share my book reviews and things like that. So I try to connect especially with readers on in a way that readers want to connect with you. They might not want to know exactly what you had for dinner all the time, but they do want to know what things you're passionate about and what things inspire you. So that's how I try to connect with them, by just being really open on social media, and also saying, if you want to talk to me, I'm there. I don't have a closed off wall like some people will have. I not yet, at least. I haven't had any stalkers yet. So in that sense, I am an open book. You can come to me whenever you want if you have a question, or if you want to know my opinion about something. I'm here, and here's how you contact me. So I try to be really open.
Nice.
Ooh, is it me?
It is you.
Okay, so I have to agree with Mike that I'm still struggling to find that balance, because it takes a lot of energy to be social for me. So doing this, I feel like I'm just talking to you guys, so it's okay. But if I feel like I'm talking to anyone more, I'm the person in the corner that's watching everybody, or will ask you about your life and take it all in, because I don't want to talk about myself if I can help it. So that's really been a struggle to try and figure out how to put yourself out there in such a way that people find it engaging. So it feels like a lot of work, and I'm still trying to find my way.
Gotcha. Travis, did you want to go?
Well, a lot of it's already been said. I think it's really important to connect with fans, because the old days of publishing are long since gone, where we just put out a book and they will come. But I use a newsletter. I try to use Facebook. But I mean, social media is constantly shifting. So the way we 5 years from now, the way we're using it might be completely different. So that's one of our jobs, is sort of trying to keep up with the times, and connect with people in the way that they want to be connected with. And as Courtney said, be available. I mean, I'm an easy guy to find on Facebook and with my website, Instagram, and so forth. But yeah, it's you do have to kind of balance how much time you spend, otherwise, because that's time you're not spending writing, right? So
good point. I'm really bad. I use a pseudonym. My Ron L Lahr is a pseudonym. My real name's Knife Sexy Time, which I feel like I should have done I should have used that for my OnlyFans, but I would have got a whole different group of followers, I think. But anyway, no, obviously I believe, it's tough because, I mean, Travis brought it up, it's very time consuming. I can throw a little something in my newsletter like Courtney said, but for me, the best way to get to know people is to be on shows like this, where you can interact in a different way, and like Mean Reviews and Indie Mayhem were designed to, in particular, give people a different way to get to know authors who are either the contestants on the show or are having their book reviewed, or being a co-host on Mean Reviews. But anyway, All right. Well, I want to thank all you guys for being here. You're awesome, and it was wonderful to see some of you again and meet some of you for the first time, and then Michael.
Thanks,
So,
man.
No,
Yeah,
but
thanks
it
for
was,
having me. I really appreciate it.
yeah, it was. I appreciate everybody coming, but now it's time for the famous Mike Jack, and I forget his bird's name. What was your bird's name?
This is Lutra.
Lutra.
Yeah.
So it's time for Mike Jack and Lutra to do their final 5 minutes. Which there we go, the last 5 minutes.
That sounds so ominous.
Yeah, after that, you're dead.
Yeah, so I'm Mike Jack Stoombos. This is Lutra the parrot. She's been very well behaved. I did not expect her to sit here this whole time and be okay with it. So for the last 5 minutes, I have a couple of current and near future things that I would like to share. I'm going to see if I'm in a good position to share a screen on this one. Presenting. Let's see, where are the share screen options? Oh, I don't know if that's working. Hang on just a moment. Well, then I might go sans shared screen. Let's see if I can get this going. Nope, it's not going to work this time around. I'm going to go sans shared screen. I'm just going to talk through some stuff. All right, thing the first. Currently, The Signal Out of Space. The first novel of this fine crew. If you like the idea of Star Trek and Starfleet Academy, but you want more stuff to go wrong, then this is where you begin. This is book 1 of currently 4. The 5th one is coming out later this year, all through Chris Kennedy Publishing. And the first one is available in a story bundle. So it is a very convenient, cheap time to get it. A SIFWA story bundle. Space is big. So for those of you who are Douglas Adams fans and know that it's Douglas Adams' birthday, like today, yesterday, or tomorrow, I should find out specifically on that. But yeah, space is big. It's really, really big. And there are 15 books available for $20. If you go to the link on the bottom, thestorybundle.com/space, that one is available. And also being part of like a SIFWA bundle, that's another win. That's a fun thing to be able to have to talk about. In the near future upcoming, so April 14th, I've got another novel coming out. This one is not in the This Fine Crew universe. This is in the Four Horsemen universe. For those of you who have read Four Horsemen, if you like the idea of different kinds of animal-based aliens and then large mech suits, then you're going to get to see some more of that in Defenders Rise, a Four Horsemen universe novel that comes out on April 14th, and that is also through Chris Kennedy Publishing. If you go to chriskennedypublishing.com and you want to be part of the launch team, the EARC readers, you can join the newsletter, and then as we get a little bit closer to that, you can just let them know via the newsletter that you want to read it and review it. It's a great way to read things in advance for free. We appreciate it, and it's a good way to get some reviews up on launch day. If you haven't read most of the Four Horsemen universe, it's a big series. It's huge. We're talking like 80 some books in this thing. So you probably won't have a chance to read all of them. But there are a lot of standalone arcs. And so Defenders Rise is the start of a new standalone arc with some of the smaller uplift creatures, the ones that aren't big enough to pilot the big mech suits. In my novel, we're going to have them pilot the big mech suits. I've described it as sort of The Moon is a Harsh Mistress meets Seven Samurai, but with the tiny furry rodents piloting the giant suits. Hopefully that'll be fun for people. That one comes out on April 14th. Going a little bit further ahead, for those of you who've been following, speaking of Kickstarters, the Inked Publishing Kickstarter. So Inked Publishing is coming out with Hidden Villains Arise. Hidden Villains Arise, the anthology, is releasing on April 17th. And I have a story in that one. The head lister for that is also Jody Lynn Nye, and that is produced by Kevin A. Davis, who is somebody who frequently appears at a lot of the Atlanta area conventions. So a lot of overlaps with the Go Indie Now network. And then finally, the biggest one that I want to be able to talk about, and I'll spend the last, minute or two on that, is this. So the Murder Birds anthology, this was the anthology for which I had a Kickstarter this last fall. Murder Birds is the first in the Unhelpful Encyclopedia collection. The Unhelpful Encyclopedia gives you a series of science fiction or fantasy short stories, each of which are illustrated, feature a creature that is very appropriate for the anthology. And after a little bit of brief scientific description, we get a worst case scenario of the sci-fi, fantasy, or horror situation that could happen with this creature. So we did the first one, Murder Birds, all stories about birds, 20 stories pulled from a few different countries, which is kind of cool to be able to have that international reach there. All authors from author education and support groups, quite a few of whom are former Writers of the Future winners, some of whom are instructors in these writer education support groups. And we're going to be spooling up for 2 more of those this coming year. We're going to be doing Murder Bugs and the first in our guide series. So Murder Bugs, very similar kind of thing. If you are part of TWT, the Writing Tribe, Superstars Writing Seminars, or Apex Writers Group, and you were interested in submitting a story to that, there are posts in those groups. We are, once again, specifically pulling authors from those kinds of groups. But yeah, we're going to be doing at least a couple more unhelpful encyclopedias. And Murder Birds premieres officially at RavenCon in Richmond, Virginia. April, I believe 22nd is the Saturday where we're hosting the event. It will appear online April 21st. So the pre-order links will be available through the Wonderbird Press site and through pretty much anywhere else that you can find me, Mike Jack Stoombos, online. So that's my talk through of this next month. This is going to be a super busy month. I am I'm not sure how exhausted I'm going to be at the end of it, but I'm really excited. I don't know if Lutra is excited, but she's also the bird in question on the logo. So for all of our spine images, we have a little silhouette of Lutra, which is hard to see at the camera right now. But yeah, Wonderbird Press, first anthology, Murder Birds of the Unhelpful Encyclopedia series. All right, that is it for me on This Week in Indies. Thank you all for listening. Hopefully you have some excellent ideas of what to check out now and in the near future. And remember, it is always time to go indie now.